Setting goals and resource assessment, uh, we when I talked about management planning in general, I did indicate that that's really one of the very first uh, things that need to be considered when you are developing a management plan. Is really what are your goals for managing the land. The book has quite a bit about this in chapter one, and I would encourage you to take a look at that in the off time here and see what that has to say about it. But really, when you're setting goals, what are you trying to achieve with your land? What is the reason that you own the land? What do you want to see happen with it into the future? How do you want to use your time, your money, your management skills to move forward into the future? A lot of times when you think about your management goals, they're some kind of action statement to complete a planting project, to earn so much money per acre, to develop riparian systems or new water sources or something like that. This is a real George Work. I think you're online here. That's a picture of you that we took a little while ago on your ranch. So George Work. George should be teaching this class actually, but oak woodland owner down in San Luis Obispo, actually Monterey County, southern Monterey County, in the San Miguel area. But that's a picture of George talking a bit about his goals for managing oak rangelands. But anyway, when you're setting your goals, it's quite important to do this with your family members. Have a session, a number of sessions, and go over with them what it is with your kids, your grandkids, thinking about the next generation. The professional advisors, the registered professional foresters, certified range managers can be a big help here. Also, you may have your accountant or tax attorneys or estate planners that can be of help there as well. But really, those goals are what guide the future management efforts for your property. In the Oak Guidelines booklet that most of you received, we talk about three different kinds of goals, and it's important that you really think through each of these and write out what those are for you, what it is you hope to accomplish. What are some of your conservation goals, your economic and production goals, your quality of life goals, and I'll elaborate on each of these a bit coming up here. For your conservation goals, in the worksheet there, we have some examples of some questions that you should answer. But it may be something like we want to sustain our existing resources. We like the tree cover that we have. We like the species composition that we have right now. We'd like to sustain that into the future. Or perhaps we want to enhance or improve the resources. I just got an email inquiry from a rancher a couple of weeks ago, an area that had been cleared and was currently being dryland farmed. And part of his conservation goal was to restore these areas that had been cleared about a generation ago with native blue oaks. And so he asked me questions about that. And Doug McCreary, who will be one of our speakers in week 3, and Doug, I think, is online right now, can provide a lot of information on those kinds of things. But anyway, this rancher's goal was to improve or enhance his resources. Improving water quality and quantity. And Royce Larson from Cooperative Extension will be talking quite a lot about erosion control and water quality and management goals next week. But that may be something that's important to you. Aesthetic values may be an important thing for you to consider, especially those of you who are considering recreational enterprises, or it's really important to you and your family. Certain things really appeal to your sense of aesthetics. I think those are important things to consider. Economic and production goals, really thinking seriously about how much of a risk taker you are, how heavily capitalized are you, and how much risk are you willing to take? What's the probability that you have that you are willing to, you can lose money. How many years out of 10 can you lose money? Uh, um, what kind of cash flow do you need? There may be a certain minimum amount of cash flow you need, perhaps to make interest payments, perhaps depending on how the property ties in with your overall family livelihood, there may well be a cash flow that's necessary. What kind of profit or rate of return do you need? So if you're investing money, you're developing a stock pond, or you're investing money in tree planting, or you're investing money to establish a guided hunt club. You're investing money, but when you're investing the money in that resource, you could be investing it somewhere else, in Japan maybe, or no. No, it's not a funny joke in this day and age. But the alternative enterprises where you can invest money is something you need to think about, so that the resources that you're investing in your property are earning the same kind of return or better than you could get at other places. Estate planning is an important consideration. How do you intend to pass this on to the next generation? What are some of the considerations there for gifting over parts of the land, and what are your goals? Do your family members even want to be part of the next generation? Are there certain members that do, certain members that don't? And really being very clear about this and talking about it as a family. And then once you have an idea of what it is you're interested in as a family, that's where professionals can advise you. How fast the trees are growing, what's likely to happen to the resource, what's happening to the breeding stock of cattle that you have out there. An estate planner, an attorney can be a big help there. But stating what your family intends in terms of passing it on to the next generation is an important consideration. Quality of life goals. Some of you own the land and live on the land because of a certain kind of lifestyle that's important to you. What about that lifestyle is important to you? You should state that in your quality of life goals, and the worksheets that you have in your book will help you think through that and guide you through those discussions. Do you want to have contact with other people? Next week, Bill Tichy will be talking to us about recreational enterprises. And I know George Work is online right now, and he has a very successful recreational enterprise on his ranch. George is great with people, and he enjoys interacting with them. Some of you may think, well, recreational enterprise sounds like it could make me some money, but I really don't like dealing with other people. Well, one of the quality of life goals you need to think about is how much personal contact do you like with others? Is this important to you? Marketing skills. I think you'll hear next week from John Shelley that there's some pretty limited opportunities for wood products, but if people are good at marketing things, they can probably be pretty successful. So do you like trying to find niches for products from your property? Is this something that really turns you on, or is this something that you just as soon not deal with? And that's really a quality of life goal, how much time and effort you want to make to develop the markets yourself or to rely on existing markets. Labor relations. Is this something you want to do as a family, that you and your kids and grandkids and nieces and nephews are going to be doing most of the work? Are you willing to get into being an employer and hiring people and with all the responsibilities of payroll and deductions and all of those kinds of things? So I put those in the quality of life goals, but they're really important things to think about as you're considering what kind of enterprises are appropriate for me to consider to meet the goals I have for my property. So as I mentioned, there's a worksheet in your book, and then listed on the screen right there, and this is taken right out of the Oak Guidelines book. This is just an example of the economic and production goals, some of the ones I rattled off, and you may come up with some other ones, but and how some of the different enterprises that we'll talk about next week might affect some of those economic and production goals. The workbook provides this also for the conservation goals and for the quality of life goals. And I guess I would encourage you to take a look at that, think through each of those enterprises and what you're considering. You'll hear quite a bit more about these enterprises next week from four outstanding speakers, and they'll talk about some of the considerations, what some of the resources that are necessary for those enterprises, and you can tie those in with your goals that you've started to think about and whether those are worth considering and moving forward with. Let's just say one more thing about that. For example, if you're considering a hunt club probably has some lower risk than other kinds of enterprises. Usually a long-term contract is involved in that. There would be annual cash flow typically associated with that. In terms of estate planning, in terms of passing this on to the next generation, there's things like your client list. You're making habitat improvements that are adding to the overall value of the property for passing it on. The profit, we classed it as moderate. Some of the statewide supply-demand relationships for recreational hunting on private lands indicate a fairly high demand for this area. So this worksheet could help you step through some of that and considerations. When you move over to the quality of life goals, which I don't have on this slide, but you'll see that it involves lots of contact with the public. There's a certain amount of active marketing that's necessary. So those are important goals. You can think about each of these as you're working through your management plan. I'm going to shift gears slightly here into assessing your property, and we have a sort of a simple approach to get some general information about what some of the possibilities for your property might be in the guidelines booklet. Those of you who are going to go out in the field with us, you'll have a chance to see us actually do some measurements and crosswalk directly into some of the recommendations in the management guidelines. But your property, you ought to think about the different areas or parcels or stands or units, pastures on your property, breaking it into some kind of homogeneous management unit. You can do this using aerial photos, are a terrific way to do it, and this used to be a pretty involved process to get aerial photos, but in the day and age of Google Earth and very high quality images that you can get these days, it's quite easy to pull down pretty good aerial images of your property, and a lot of times this will be governed by where you have fence lines. Sometimes where streams are or your road systems might break these into units as well. But putting a map together of your different areas there and looking at what the possibilities are for each of those different areas is an important part of the planning process. For those individual units, some of the information that should be collected, and there's a variety of ways that this can be done in the guidelines book and some of the other resource information that I've listed on the website for you that you can order, some for free and some from purchase from the university. You can either develop a series of fixed radius plots or a line transect works pretty well, and we'll go through some examples of this in the field. But you can get information on what the vegetation species composition is like. Morgan will talk next week about some of the forage composition and the importance of that. Greg just talked quite a bit about the different oak species, but knowing which species you have on your property, what the current distribution is. The crown cover percent, we'll get into that in just a moment here, but that's a nice way to get some broad information on habitat quality, on forage production, and to give some general ideas about what the possibilities are for your individual units. Greg is going to talk more about wildlife habitat elements in just a moment here, snags, woody debris, cavities, but having an idea of how many of these are on your property, where they're at, are there some shortages that you need to be concerned about, maybe recruiting some of these important elements. What's your riparian condition like? What's your fuel loads like? Doug will talk about this in a couple of weeks. Acorn production, I'll talk about that in a couple of weeks as well. We have a rating system that we use for assessing acorn production. And what's your distribution of seedlings and saplings? Is there a new cohort of regeneration that's going to replace some of your mature trees as they die or they're harvested for some commercial product? In your book there, we have a table that gives some pretty general ideas about the possible outputs of different enterprises on your property. And we break it out by broad oak woodland cover type, blue oak woodland or blue oak foothill pine woodland, valley oak woodland, and coastal oak woodland or montane hardwoods. Those would be also include interior live oak or black oak woodlands. And we break it into four broad crown cover types, 10 to 25%, 25 to 40, 40 to 60, and 60 to 100. And excuse the washed out nature of this slide here, but just as an example, here's a blue oak woodland, 40 to 60% canopy cover with a slope under 30%. And with this information, we can use those tables and get some general information about what the possibilities are for that particular stand. So for that picture I just showed you, there, blue oak woodland, 40 to 60% canopy cover. So that would be found, that's from the guidelines booklet, table 3-2 on page 23 of your book. So there's a reference to stand type C. And so Site C or Stand Type C you can look at in your book on page 26 of the guidelines, and it gives you some very general information based on some statewide inventory data and some growth modeling that we've been able to do on oak cover and a general forestry assessment, a recreational assessment, a biodiversity assessment, and a grazing assessment. And so just as an example for this, for the 40 to 60% canopy, we give a range of volumes there, 425 to 1,200 cubic feet per acre. We give an estimated 10-year growth rate. We give some idea of if you were going to be doing some commercial harvesting, how much could be harvested to still maintain the current crown cover. And then we talk about the importance of regeneration. So this kind of helps you get some broad sideboards on what's possible for these different stands. For recreation, and Bill will talk about this next week, but this has some good opportunities, especially since this is a less than a 30% slope, good access for hunters, excellent to medium large populations of deer, squirrel, wild pigs, turkeys, so some of the commercial game species. There can be some thinning that could be done to improve game habitat. Prescribed fire could be used to improve browse, and we talk about perhaps some supplemental seeding might improve some of the habitat for game species. There's some information in there on some wildlife diversity. Greg will talk about this in a lot more detail, but give some broad idea of what's number of species that might be found, birds, mammals, amphibians, reptiles. There's also some tables in the back that can help you fine-tune this somewhat. Morgan will talk about grazing production next week, but this talks a little bit about the kind of forage production that's possible. the effect of canopy cover and shading effect on the forage output, and he'll talk more about the relationship of high rainfall and low rainfalls next week, some of the undesirable invasive species that might be in the understory, and some of the opportunities for improving grazing habitat. So that's a kind of a quick look at assessing what your goals are, trying to give you a framework to guide you through family discussions and working with a resource professional or a planning and business professional. And then once you have those kind of laid out, to get some general ideas about what kind of management enterprises might be appropriate for your land. And I guess I would encourage you all to do a little homework this week, maybe think through some of your goals for your property, and maybe some of you have already done this. Take a look at some of those tables that I just made reference to for the different cover types you have. Perhaps some of you have some very dense stands, 60 to 100% canopy cover, and some lighter stands, 10 to 24% canopy cover. See what's possible, and you'll come armed with some good questions for our presenters next week. So I'm going to